I will now show how we can add server methods, custom server methods to our server methods module of a DataSnap 2010 server, and how we can use them using a T-SQL connection in a DataSnap application client by generating a client proxy. After that, I will demonstrate HTTP authentication as well as filters to enhance both the servers and the clients. So let's continue with our DataSnap server targets. In this case, it may be easier to use a DataSnap server, the VCR Forms application, and I want to use the shared server methods unit 1 that's shared by all 4 project targets. As you can see, the server methods unit, T-server methods class, already has one sample method echo string, which returns a value. We can add other functions here as well, like server time, returning a date time type, which is unknown unless we add the sysutils unit to the use clause. And if we tdate time, and if we implement it, then the result colon equals now. So now we have 2 methods. We can add more methods, and in a later small movie I will show you how we can return data tables, queries, or other types. For now, let's save the project, build the DataSnap server application. Oh, there are 2 errors. Sysutils was already known. Apologies. Build the DataSnap server application, and we can now run it. And we should run it without debugging, so we can continue to use the Delphi IDE for other targets. We get an error here. This is a known error. The error is the socket port and address are already in use. And for this we have to take a look at the server container unit. And this is something that can happen on your development machine as well. And the problem is caused by the DS HTTP server component, which by default sets the HTTP port to port 80. This is the default value that's generated by Delphi, and in itself it's not a problem unless you are developing on a machine which has a web server pre-installed, like I have on this XP machine. I have IIS, which is already listening to port 80, and since there cannot be 2 listeners on port 80, we have to change this, for example, to port 8080. And remember that this unit, server container unit 1, is shared by the console application. It's not shared by the Windows servers, so if you want to make sure that the servers will be deployed correctly, we have to change port 80 at the servers as well. And you may want to make sure that the server is actually listening to a different port than the regular DataSnap application. Okay, so we've changed the port number to 8080, and now we can run the DataSnap server application. And here we are, this is the DataSnap server application up and running, listening to port 8080. We can now create a new application, a new project for DataSnap client. Let's create a VCR Forms application for the DataSnap client and save the project with my client form as well as DataSnap client for the project type. In order to make a connection to my DataSnap server application, you need a T-SQL connection component. And a T-SQL connection component normally used to connect to databases can be used to connect to DataSnap as well by using the driver property and setting driver property to DataSnap. This will allow you to set all kinds of DataSnap properties here, including the communication protocol, which can be HTTP or TCP/IP. The latter is the default value. And using TCP/IP on the local host with ports 211, we can connect to the DataSnap server application already running. So let's see if we can already make a connection to the application. We have a username and password. Okay, and here we are connected now to the DataSnap server. The login prompt actually came from the fact that the login prompt property of my T-SQL connection component is set to true. If we set this one to false, and now we can make a connection, and as you can see, no more questions for login and password. We add this with the authentication user and password in a minute. With the T-SQL connection component connected, we can right-click on it and generate DataSnap client classes. Now remember, we are building a client here, So we are generating a proxy class based on what the server is exposing. So generate the client classes. And here we see a tServer methods 1 client with the two functions, echo string and echo server time, that we want to call from our client application that actually implemented at the server side. So save this unit 1 inside my server methods client unit. Now go back to the client form and we can add a button, for example. Inside this button we can actually implement and call the server. First we should add some methods to the users clause. We should add the server methods client unit, the one that was just generated. And now in here we can actually call the server. So the server is the tServer methods client 1 type. We can create it, the tServer methods client 1, which has a create constructor that has two possible implementations. One just passing a TDBX connection, another TDBX connection with the instance owner, where you can specify if you own the instance or not. In this case, I just want to call the first instance SQL connection 1, which has a DBX connection property, which is of the correct type that we can pass to the create constructor of our server. Once we have the server, I'd like to do a try finally call server.free in the end, and inside here we can call the server dot, for example, server time, and then a date time to string from the server time, and do a show message. Okay, let's see if we can build the client. Yes, the client can be built, and now we can run the client. And remember, the server is already up and running. Click on the button and here's the server time at the server, nicely incrementing. So with this I've demonstrated how we can create our own custom server methods, how we can import them and call them by a DataSnap client application.